Welcome to Reshair on ESPN 730. For the next hour, your host, Chris Reshaar, will bring fresh air to your financial needs. Excite, educate, and empower you to make sound financial decisions. Chris is a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with Movement Mortgage, equal housing lender, originator license number 117266. Now, here's your host, Chris Reshaar.
Welcome to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshaar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. And if you have never listened to Reshair Radio, I'm really excited to have you as a listener this week. But let me tell you a little bit about what we do here on Reshair Radio. As you heard in the intro, the goal really of the show is to excite, educate, and empower Charlotte teens to make sound financial decisions. A lot of it is related to mortgage, finance, insurance, home inspections, you name it. As a licensed loan officer, I have to bring topics that I actually have some knowledge on. But what I also do is bring in area experts, special guests, whatever it might be, bringing in local professionals to really bring intrigue and interest and hot topics to the show. So really excited to be back for another week of Reshair Radio on every Sunday at 10 a.m. And so really, as I jump into our show for this morning, I'd like to officially introduce my guest presenter, David Szajowitz. David, welcome to the show this morning.
Thank you, Chris, and that you pronounce my last name very well.
Yeah, if you call in and you can tell me what the spelling of his name is without Googling it, I might send you a little door prize. I don't know, but David Szajowitz, let's just. What I'd like to do is spend a minute or two, now that you're officially on the show and welcomed, to tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do, etc. I know you are a licensed realtor, broker as well.
Yep.
In North and South Carolina.
In North and South Carolina,
North
correct.
and South Carolina.
And California.
Oh, that's right, in California.
Don't forget that, Chris.
That's right. Well, our listeners need to know if they want to buy a house in California,
right.
They could give you a call. But and you work with Premier Sotheby's International Realty.
Yes. I work for Premier Sotheby's International Realty. They actually started in 1983 in Naples, Florida. And then they moved out here to the Carolinas. They've got 26 plus locations along the Florida Gulf Coast and through the Carolinas. But they actually started Sotheby's International Realty back in 1976. And they are a part of or affiliated with Sotheby's Auction House, which started, and I do remember this, back in 1744.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
People can't see his gray hair, but he's one of the oldest men around.
That's right.
Still around hundreds of years later. But anyway, so obviously you're a realtor. So why don't you take a minute and tell us about your designation? You had, as we sort of prepared for our show today, you had mentioned to me that you are an international property specialist. That sounds really cool, man.
It is. I've always been intrigued by anything international. My mother was born in Mexico, my father in Czechoslovakia, and I was born along with my siblings in the United States.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
That is quite the mix.
It is. And when you look at me, you can tell. But, we grew up hearing different languages, different cultures, getting used to that, different types of food. And I think just growing up, that kind of stuck with me to somehow always be involved in whatever I was doing professionally, having some international attachment. And eventually when I got into real estate, which I started back in California in 2006, and then moved out here to the Carolinas in 2008, and then eventually got my license out here. It always just was in the back of my mind that at some point I wanted to direct my real estate business to those either from the United States wanting to buy internationally or for folks from another country wanting to buy here in the United States.
All right. So the big question I have is, what's your favorite kind of food?
Ooh. I used to be really picky when I was a kid, had trouble fitting into my clothing. Now I have trouble getting into my clothing. I don't really have one specific favorite. I guess maybe one that will stick out is Mexican food.
Okay.
But I love Italian, and I really love Asian food now, so I love everything.
All right, good. All food counts, right?
Yes. The seafood diet.
The seafood diet, right. Eat everything you see. All right, cool. So now, how did you kind of get started in real estate? You had mentioned that you were licensed in California, but it's very rare that I meet somebody that's, said, I took my career inventory when I was a junior in high school, and I decided I wanted to be a realtor, so I got licensed and did, and here we sit. My guess is that's not your story, but why don't you tell us?
Yeah, I actually started out, I knew I wanted to be in sales. I just really enjoy the interaction with people. And I also like listening and to what their situation is and helping them out in solving that situation. That, to me, is very gratifying. And back in the 80s, a good friend of mine who I've known now for, 50 some odd years, has a construction company back out in California. He said to me, Dave, I really think you'd be good in real estate. You have the people skills and so forth.
And you are an amazing listener. I mean, I've shared that with you before. And we've been working together for a number of years, and you're a great listener, and I think that's a really important skill as a realtor.
What did you say, Chris? No.
Yeah. I can't hear you.
No, thank you. No, I appreciate that. But anyway, so I don't know, after listening to him telling me to get into real estate, I don't know, it never left me. And eventually I thought, okay, let me give it a shot. And I did. And I really started to see the benefits and enjoyment of being in this business. I think of it as a career. This is not a job for me. It's something that I can do as long as I want to do it, wherever I want to do it, hence the international part. And every situation is different. Every person is different, and so it makes the job interesting every day.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I appreciate your perspective there. I think that at the end of the day, as we have our listeners listen to special guests like you, it's good to have a background on how you got into this. I think the other thing that is fascinating is that there are a lot of people out there, particularly seeing the real estate market as a pretty strong market. A lot of people think, well, real estate's easy and you make a lot of money, right? And you and I both know that there isn't a day off. Realtors,
no,
there is no day off. There's no vacation that's paid. There's not a day that pretty much your cell phone is ringing. And as long as your clients are awake, they assume you are too. Right?
Yeah, no, that is true, especially residential real estate. That is a division, I would say, of the real estate business where you have to be available almost 24/7, I would say, on holidays, bad weather, whatever the case is, because you're trying to find somebody a home as their primary residence most of the time. And when that's the case, it might be a relocation need. It might be for numerous other reasons. And you have to work with their schedule. It might be when they get off of work, before they go to work, during the holidays, because that's when they're going to have the time off to do that. So, yeah, you have to be flexible, and you really have to enjoy working with people, especially in the
types.
Yeah. Yep. Of all. Oh, yeah. I've got stories. Good stories.
Of course, they're all good. They're all really good stories.
Oh, yeah.
So, David, tell me really what you like most about being a realtor.
Yeah, Chris, as I mentioned before, what I like about being a realtor is it really boils down to this. I mean, you have to love architecture, communities, all the different
design, et cetera.
Et cetera. And the main thing is you really have to have a love for what you do because, like you said, it's a 24-hour, 24/7 business.
Yep. I mean, and we see that on the mortgage side, maybe not as much as you, right? Because you're showing people homes on weekends and nights and evenings.
Yes.
But people still need to get answers on, hey, we need to get a letter in for this offer. I've gotten calls on Thanksgiving. I've gotten calls on Christmas. I've gotten calls, and usually people are trying to be sensitive, but you know what? People are still out shopping and buying homes when they have time off, when they have breaks, and they really expect you to be be ready and available. But obviously, you still have a love for what you do.
Yeah, I do. And the thing is, look at the satisfaction you get in helping somebody out, whether it be because they just are upgrading to a new home because their family's growing, or because maybe they're getting ready to retire and they want to start their new chapter in life, or maybe they're relocating. Whatever the case is, you've got all these great things happening to these various people that you're working with, and that to me is a great satisfaction to be able to help them out through that process. And eventually the goal is to get them into their new home that they're going to love and start their new life. And that's what I love about it.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. There are times that I've thought that, I'd like to switch from mortgage to real estate. Like you can get out and see the houses and have fun, but I'm sure driving around also can be exhausting too.
It can, yeah. And that's a part of it. I mean, you have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to get out there, whether the weather is good or bad, whether it's the holiday or not, late at night. You might have to show 10, 20 homes. But at the end of the day, just knowing that you've helped somebody out, which I'm sure you feel the same.
I feel the same.
That's the greatest feeling.
Absolutely. Helping them be a part of that process to become a homeowner if they haven't, or become a homeowner again. So
exactly.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to intro the next question for our listener, and then we may have to split that up and open up the next segment. But really, I wanted to get your perspective on the Charlotte metro housing market.
Okay. I think there's a lot of reasons why I think the market is doing very, very well. According to the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, Charlotte is one of the fastest growing cities in the nation. We currently have 827,000 people that live just in the city of Charlotte. And then once you go out to the Charlotte metropolitan area, you've got over 2.4 million people.
Wow.
So that's a lot.
Someone told me recently, maybe it was a recent show that I did, that like 43 or 44 people move to Charlotte every single day.
Yeah, and imagine that.
Something like that.
So, I mean, and another interesting fact, actually, that now it just came to mind that I read in the Charlotte Observer was that the population has not stopped growing since the Civil War. So that to me is pretty amazing. But, I guess if you think of the cost of living, the quality of life here, the education system, either for those getting ready to go to the higher education, such as the universities that we have, just all these things really help to promote and bring people here. There's a lot of big companies here. You've got many top 5 Fortune 500 companies here also in the Carolinas. As a matter of fact, in the our MLS, our multiple listing service, the average single family home and condo townhome right now from May of this year compared to May of last year went up 7.3%, which is now coming out to 255,662. And in the Mecklenburg area, the average sales price is 288,448. That's an increase of 8.4%.
Great stats. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
So, David, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break and maybe intro this topic again.
Sure.
So if you've been listening to Reshair Radio, folks, I just want to say we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Did you know it has been reported that an estimated 80% of Americans have credit inaccuracies on their credit reports? Most people that have either inaccuracies or existing items that can be negotiated or adjusted do not know what their best score could be until they have found a new home or buying a new car or applying for a credit card. Then it's too late and they have to accept a higher interest rate or lose the opportunity altogether. The time to work on improving your credit score is before you need it. Whether you have a 440, 640, or even a 740 FICO score, there is always room for improvement. The National Credit Care Team is comprised of individuals dedicated to helping the millions of consumers plagued by credit inaccuracies, errors, and fraud. It is our mission to help inform consumers and alleviate the stress of working with creditors and credit bureaus. Together, we can maximize your scores to get the best interest rates possible and save you money. Call now, 303-747-6390. That's 303-747-6390. Or visit us at www.nationalcreditcare.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshatar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. I do need to let our listeners know that I am licensed as a loan officer. My NMLS license number is 117266, and that Movement Mortgage is an equal housing lender, so that's important for compliance purposes. If you were listening to our previous segment, we've got David Szajowitz here from Premier Sotheby's International Realty, and he is a licensed realtor in North and South Carolina, licensed broker technically in North and South Carolina. And we've been really just kind of introing the show, getting to know David and his background and some of the things that he enjoys, including Mexican food. But we were really just kind of introing, and David, you shared some really great statistics about sort of increase in home values in Charlotte just from last May to this May, et cetera. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners in reference to our market here in Charlotte?
Yeah, here are some highlights actually that I thought your listeners might find interesting.
Yeah, some of them might not have been tuned in, so you can share a few.
Yeah, exactly. So besides being one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, 44 people moving here daily, we are the top 10 most popular U.S. moving destination city. We're the fourth fastest growing large city in the country, the second largest in the Southeast. And housing in Charlotte is 85.9% of the national average. So I think that's a pretty good thing right there.
And what does that kind of mean, that the house price is lower than the national average by 15%?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the stats so my listeners do too.
Yep. No, that is correct. Yeah. So, I mean,
we're still affordable, but we're getting to the point where it's getting close to where we're about the same as some other markets.
Well, I think we are getting closer, but at least you have, choices, because if you can't afford, let's say, living in the inner Charlotte area, communities such as Cotswold, Myers Park, Dilworth, so forth, or the Ballantyne area,
whatever.
Yeah, now, areas that are really becoming popular are Matthews and Monroe and Albemarle and areas in Union County. So you have a lot of choices. And that's a nice thing also about Charlotte, is that it offers something for everyone. When I am showing folks around that have never been here before, I like to take them and give them a tour of Charlotte, show them what the uptown area has to offer in regards to entertainment.
It's like the tour of Italy, the Olive Garden.
Okay, that's right. We're going back to food.
That's right. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm starting to get hungry already.
It sounds good to me. But anyways, give them a tour.
So you kind of area shop and you give them exposure to the different parts of the city.
Yeah, and along with that, different neighborhoods so that they can see there's eclectic neighborhoods with traditional architecture, planned unit development type communities where you have a pool and so forth. So Charlotte really, in that sense, has a lot to offer, along with
and we're really going to kind of go into that a little bit more as we get into our theme, sort of some of the things that you do for your clients, but you're kind of giving us a sneak preview here, right?
Yes.
You are. So,
a teaser.
There you go. So, well, I think this is really kind of a good time to sort of jump into, what the topic that we wanted to bring, or theme for the show. And if you haven't listened to Reshair Radio before, the goal is to bring in, guests and expert contributors to talk about knowledge and information that you might not have thought about. We want you to learn something. We want you to feel like you've been equipped with new information to make a good real estate decision, to make a good mortgage decision, whatever it might be. So, with your sort of background and the international flair that you had mentioned earlier, we decided that we really wanted to help people understand how to go about buying their final retirement dream home. Mm-hmm. And this could really fit in lots of different age categories, because we have some retirees that are in their early 60s and we have some that have worked much longer. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of different range of people that might fit through the theme that we've sort of come up with today. So we want you to know sort of what those steps are to consider when you're maybe making your final home purchase. Because you've been through bought my first home, raised families perhaps. Yep. Maybe you've seen families exit and leave the home. You've maybe downsized, maybe not. But a lot of people, they have even downsized after their children have left home, but it might not be that final home for them. Mm-hmm. They may go, you know what, we would like to live somewhere where we have all the amenities and we can do workouts in the local clubhouses and we can be a part of activities. Or maybe your sort of final home is in a quiet wooded setting where nobody can ever find you. Right. And you can have the birds chirping and you can be completely private. Right.
That's right.
We don't know what our listeners are going to be into the most, but what would you say the very first step is when somebody is looking at, you know what, we're ready for that final home? What's the first step your client needs to consider, David? Well,
in my opinion, Chris, I think the first step you have to consider is, okay, what is your financial situation going to be? Because at this point, if you're getting ready to retire or you are going to retire, you're not going to have that income coming in on a regular basis from your job. So now you're going to probably be relying on your investments that you've made.
Sure. So you need to understand your budget.
You do.
Right?
You do.
So the key step is before you get in the car with David or you go out on Zillow or the internet and say, here's the house, here it is. You really need to step back and maybe say, you know, what are our sources of income? If you've got Social Security coming in and your spouse has Social Security coming in, you have to think about things like, well, what happens if one of the spouse is no longer with me?
Correct.
And will that Social Security income sustain that final home, right? Whether there's a mortgage or not, will that income sustain the lifestyle that you have so that that final home really is a place of comfort and retreat for your remaining term here, right? Remaining term here on the earth. I sometimes I talk in mortgage language, but keep in mind that mortgage does mean death contract.
Just before you go.
Right. But mortgage does mean death contract, so it does work. So understanding your budget is an important step. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's really important because you don't, one thing I do with my clients is when they're getting ready to buy, whether they're in retirement or not, I tell them before you even go to lender, unless you're going to be purchasing with cash. Okay. Right. But for the most part, if you're going to be getting a mortgage, then I think that's really important to sit down and say, okay, what am I working with? What do I need on a daily basis? And what am I going to have left if I'm going to get a mortgage? Or if you're going to be paying cash, what am I working with, and subtracting your daily needs, things of that nature, and figuring out, okay, what am I going to have to work with, unless you're going to buy something, pay it outright in cash, and that's it.
Right. Then the house isn't expensive typically if you pay cash.
Yeah. So
but ironically, not everybody does today. Particularly, I see seniors sometimes use the reverse mortgage.
Yes.
Because it doesn't take all of their cash, but also doesn't give them a big fat mortgage payment each month. So there are things that we look at up front, but I really do think at the end of the day, you got to understand your budget. That's step number one, and I think that's very wise counsel.
Yeah, it really is, because I would hate for somebody to not do that, get out there, find something, buy a home, and then realize later on, now something changes in their financial situation where now they might end up losing that home. And I don't want that. This should be fun. You should be able to enjoy the next chapter of your life. So again, Chris, yes, I think being proactive, figuring out your finances, and then if you are getting a mortgage to buy your next home, then speaking with a lender such as yourself.
Which is really step two.
Yes.
Step two is know what you can qualify for. So I'm going to take a minute, since this is really my category.
No, go right ahead.
Expertise. And, it is interesting because earlier this week, I had a client that called to get qualified. She needed to sell her existing home in order really to have the money to buy the new home because she was retired. She didn't have enough cash flow in her budget to cover the new mortgage or the new house payment plus the existing one she had. But it was kind of a tough decision for her to determine, well, gosh, I have to sort of put my home on the market, but I don't necessarily know where I'm living yet, or will they take a contingent sale? And we had to really work through that. And it turned out that she actually had a conversation with her financial advisor, going back to step one, which is her budget, right?
Yes.
And the advisor says, it doesn't really make sense for you to get a mortgage because your home will likely sell, you'll have enough cash. And they weighed the pros and the cons and decided not to get the mortgage. And that's absolutely fine. My job is to get people qualified if they need a mortgage. I don't need another customer's loan to pay my bills. I'm successful enough, David, that it's more about helping each client along the way. I get more, reward from helping people. And that I've learned over the years that if you really, truly help people, the money will come. And that's not my big concern anymore in my career. She didn't get a loan, and that's okay. And I said, absolutely, good luck. She said, thank you so much. You were very pleasant to work with and appreciate the service that you gave us. And I said, no problem. But, the next time she has a friend that says, I'm thinking about getting a reverse mortgage. I don't have the cash flow that I need. I need to be able to stay in my home. She's going to say, call that guy, Chris Reshair, over at Movement Mortgage. He was really nice. He took care of us. And that's where the reward comes, right? It comes back to you, to me, threefold. But let me mention, and I apologize if you wanted to say something.
No, go right ahead, Chris.
So since we're sort of on this topic of that final home, I do a lot of what we call the home equity conversion mortgage or reverse mortgage or HECM.
Yep.
The industry has sort of changed the name, right? We went from the reverse mortgage into the HECM or home equity conversion mortgage, and people are like, "What's that mortgage?"
Sounds
it's the reverse
sophisticated.
mortgage. It's not anything different. It's the technical name. But I think the industry was trying to move away from some of the misconceptions of the 80s that the reverse mortgage had with it, to sort of bring it to light that a lot of the challenges or components of that mortgage that may have been challenges in many years past have really been addressed, and it's a much more safer, or less expensive product than it used to be years ago. So that is, if you're talking about your sort of final retirement home, a lot of people have an opportunity to consider the reverse or HECM product as an option to keep the cash flow going well, maybe not use all the cash to put down. And I qualify for people or qualify clients for that, or even a regular product. It's very interesting because sometimes I do both, and whatever one they pick is fine by me. And if they have the luxury of paying cash, that's great too. So qualifying is simple. It's a 10-minute phone conversation. Typically, we get the information over the phone. We email you back or text you back or whatever method you want and say, here's what we found. So we got to take a quick break, but let me give you my phone number here. The number is 704-277-4463. Again, my cell number is 704-277-4463. 4463. So if you've heard anything that's interested you, including qualifying or wanting to buy a home with David, all you need to do is give me a quick call, text me and say, I need a loan, or I need David to help me find a house.
There you go.
And we'll make sure at the beginning of the week we get connected with you and provide the service that you're looking for. We're going to take a quick break. Thanks for listening to Reshair. We've got 2 more segments, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Sports fans know that the key to winning the big game is going in prepared. Right now, houses are selling fast. So if you're in the market for a new home purchase, don't just be prepared, be Movement Mortgage prepared. Charlotte's leading mortgage lender, Chris Reshaar at Movement Mortgage, will tee you up with a free, fully underwritten, upfront pre-approval. Shop for the home of your dreams, already backed by an upfront pre-approval at Movement Mortgage. Call Chris today at 704-277-4463 or find Chris at www.themortgagegenius.com. Go into the game prepared with Chris Reshaar of Movement Mortgage.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshaar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. We've got David Szajowitz here, broker associate with Premier Sotheby's International Realty. And if you're just tuning in, we want to let you know who we are. Actually, I did that, but nonetheless, what we've been talking about the first couple of segments. David is a realtor, North and South Carolina. He helps people buy and sell homes. That's the basics. But what we were really talking about as our theme today is really helping you find and purchase your final retirement home, helping to keep that sort of dream alive. We want that
Correct.
last home to be a place where you just say, wow, this is it. I want to stay here. hunker down for the rest of your term, as we talked about earlier, or life. But David, we had mentioned a couple of key steps in sort of that finding that final retirement home, which was understanding your budget, getting qualified if you need a mortgage loan. But I think really the next step, from what I understand, is really determining your wants versus needs, and that boils down to what you call their home search criteria.
Correct, Chris.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so after they find out what their budget is in regards to purchasing a home, then the next thing I like to find out is where do they want to live? So for example, if it's here in the Charlotte area, and if they're not familiar, as I mentioned before, I like to show them around different areas and tell them about what each area has to offer. The other thing that I try to do too is once I know, and I'll go over this in a moment, but what their criteria is show them one or two homes in different parts of the area so they can start getting a feel for what's out there for what they get for their money, because some areas might give them more for the money than other areas. I kind of think of it as a funnel. It's wide at the top and it's narrow at the bottom. And so my goal is to make this whole experience fun for somebody, stress-free and easy as possible. So it is a lot of legwork, let's say, or homework in the beginning, but then very quickly it starts becoming streamlined. And that's my whole point. So once they figure out what area, then we start focusing on the type of home that they want. But some of the things we'll also look at in the home search criteria are property taxes.
So someone would actually make a decision on a home depending on what the property taxes might be?
They could. For example, South Carolina happens to be lower than in North Carolina, at least at this time.
And I think as I run analysis for customers, it can be significantly different.
Yeah, I mean, Charlotte right now is about 1.29% of your appraised value that the county gives.
Yeah, the city or
yes.
whatever, appraised value.
And in South Carolina, I believe it's around 1%, somewhere around there. So for some folks on a limited budget, that makes a big difference.
What are some of the other components that you guys look at?
Great question. Some of the other components will be HOA dues.
What is an HOA due, just for our listener?
It's a homeowners association fee, that you pay either monthly, quarterly, or yearly, and it's to help pay for the common areas of the community you live in.
Right. So if they've got like a basket weaving center.
That's right.
You got to pay for that.
Exactly.
Well, typically pool, tennis courts, those kinds of things.
That's
right. I just want to make sure our listeners know. So, and particularly with like a condominium, maybe in the uptown Charlotte area, it's not uncommon to see association dues at $200, $250, $300, and sometimes even higher, depending on the amenities that come with that particular condominium unit. And there are association dues even in what you call planned urban developments or PUD neighborhoods where there's a pool and other amenities. It doesn't have to be just a condominium that has it, but the condominium is typically a monthly fee. But you're also not mowing the lawn.
Yep.
Somebody's, debugging the pool for you every single day and adding the chlorine and all that jazz. So all those things, you end up paying for in that association due. And there are some people that will actually buy a home intentionally that doesn't have an association due because, like you said, some have tighter budgets than others. And if you're a senior and you're finding that final home, you add up, $400 or $500 a year, that can tax somebody's budget. And, Social Security doesn't rise that quickly. It barely keeps pace, if at all, with the pace of our economy.
And HOA dues, and as well as obviously property taxes, but HOA dues are not steady. I mean, they're always going up. Usually,
go up too. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. What's another component that someone might use in their criteria to determine that final home?
I think the other thing now is going to be location. What kind of amenities it offers. Maybe depending on your current health situation, you might want to be near medical facilities,
Okay.
be more in the city or maybe in the suburban areas instead of in the country
Okay.
or in the mountains or by a lake or whatever. So I think your situation, you have to look at it. Do I need to be, again, next to any shopping centers? Do I need to have public transportation nearby? Things of that nature. The other thing I would look at is what type of a lifestyle do you have? Are you one that's into sports?
Lifestyles of the famous, or wait, the rich and famous.
The lifestyles of the rich and famous, exactly.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Robert Leach. Or Robin Leach, sorry.
Well, see, hey, we make a good team, don't we?
Yeah. But those things are important too. If sports are important to you, or the outdoors, or living by the lake or the ocean, coastal areas, those are things that I would think about as well. And then you start getting into the type of home that you want also. Do I need a single story? Am I okay with a 2-story as long as I have a master on the main floor? What kind of square footage do I really need? It's interesting. Some people will say, Dave, I don't care what square footage it is, as long as I get it for the price that I want. But I can't tell you, and I do tell them this, how many times I've heard people say, I've got to downsize. Why? Because the cost to heat the house, to keep it cool, all of these things is expensive. And so I think those are good questions to ask. And that comes in line again with your budget. What can I really realistically afford? What's going to make sense?
Well, and the smaller your home, the less likely the in-laws will show up at your home.
That's right.
All right.
Or in that case, it might even be the kids with the grandkids.
Well, they love the grandkids. They just don't want their son and daughters to show up.
There you go.
Leave the kids, and we'll let you go do what you need to do. But well, anyway, I like to have fun on Reshair Radio, folks. Hopefully you enjoy a little bit of banter back and forth and some fun. All right, so let's sort of take a different twist here, because you had mentioned at the top of the show that you also have an international designation. So
yes,
we had prepared just a few components that people would want to consider as they're looking at that final dream home, keeping the dream alive, finding that final home that they retire in. That there might be some international considerations that would come into play, because it might be, I can't tell you, my wife and I have traveled to several Caribbean, beautiful countries and thought, wow, I could see myself, this would be nice and it's affordable and I could see myself staying here. This sounds like a really good retirement plan. And we may have some listeners that have some of those dreams too. So what are some international considerations that people would have to have?
Yeah, great question, Chris. So one of the reasons, there's a couple of reasons why people might want to consider buying or moving somewhere else outside of their own home country, or specifically here in the United States. And that might be, again, you're retiring, you're getting ready to retire, and you have a limited budget. And maybe it's too expensive to stay here in the U.S. for you, and it's not affordable healthcare insurance and so forth. So for many, many years now, this is nothing new. A lot of Americans have been moving to neighboring countries where the cost of living is much cheaper. Either buying or renting is much cheaper than in the U.S., and so forth. What's interesting that I've learned over the years now with international purchasing is, one, you want to purchase something that's close to your home country or to the U.S.
Okay.
Why? Because there might be a need for you to get back, either an emergency situation or a family situation, whatever the case is, to see a doctor. So usually people will want to live close to their home country. The other thing you want to consider in choosing a country is the political and economic stability of a country. You don't want to buy a home somewhere or go and live somewhere, and then all of a sudden there's political chaos, there's a coup going on, and now, who knows what. The other thing you want to consider too is economic stability, because you're bringing in your U.S. currency into that country, and you don't want it devaluating and making things difficult for you, again, because you're on a limited income and now you're in your retirement stage.
Sure.
So all these things are actually quite important. Some other things to consider, Chris, are, what are your real estate rights? I've spoken to some people. Yeah. I've actually knew somebody that bought a home. I'm not going to say where, but they bought a home outside of the United States, and the government actually ended up taking it away, or someone within the local government. And now the situation has changed over the years and become much better because they realized there is a lot of money to be made for these countries that allow expats to come in there. And so I think things are changing in some places. But again, that's important. I think, especially if you're going to buy, I would look into what are the property rights for someone who's not a citizen of that country.
And David, I'm going to jump in here real quick.
Go right ahead, Chris.
Because we're just about out of time for this segment. So as you've been listening, you can see or hear that David's got a lot of really unique perspective on really these international considerations. So we're really talking about buying that final retirement home,
yes,
whether here you're stateside or maybe even internationally, and you want to buy a home down in Mexico, right? Some really, really fun things that we're talking about here, but I appreciate you sharing what you've shared so far. We're going to take a quick break for our last commercial, and we've got one more segment. If there's anything that you have heard that intrigues you, we want you to pick up the phone. We want you to give us a call, and we can absolutely help you, whatever your final home, retirement home is. Let us help you with that. The number, real quick, is 704-277-4463. It's 704-277-4463. And I'm also going to throw out David's number. His number is 704-763-2567, and David Szajowitz's direct number is 704-763-2567. So stay tuned. We'll be right back as we wrap up this next segment.
This is Chris Reshaar, your host of Reshair Radio. As a mortgage professional, we interact with several industry-related professionals, and we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I have a choice to select a closing attorney either to purchase or do a refinance, I choose John Ringer with Hutchins Law Firm. He is a legal professional, and he covers commercial and residential transactions. More than just a closing attorney, John wants to be your attorney for life. He can provide you insights you need to make accurate and informed legal decisions. As a Charlotte native, John has witnessed the tremendous growth and development of our city and region. As a part of Hutchins Law Firm with more than a quarter century of experience and 400 years of collective combined legal experience, they have what you're looking for. They have offices in Charlotte, Fayetteville, Wilmington, and Columbia, South Carolina. Please give John a call if you need an attorney, the right attorney, at 980-275-9810. That's 980-275-9810.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. We're on our final segment for this Sunday morning and are excited to continue to bring this topic. We've been talking with David Szajowitz with Premier Sotheby's International Realty, and we've really just been talking about really creating that final retirement dream home where perhaps your final move, what you need to do, what you need to know, steps you need to take. And we've really talked a little bit about understanding your budget, how to get qualified, sort of narrowing your home search criteria. David, you've shared a lot of great stuff with our listeners in the previous segments, and we'll definitely encourage you to listen back on ESPN for the podcast, or even out on reshairradio.com. You can listen to the show in its entirety later. But we were really sort of talking about the international component of retiring, and that some people may consider retiring in Mexico or Dominican Republic or other areas of the world. And you had some really important things that you were going through. We didn't get through them all, so I'd like to pick up where we left off in terms of some of the considerations that people need to have for that final retirement home.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. So the other things that folks might want to consider, because a lot of countries, maybe aren't as, in some places, as modernized as we are in the United States. So, for example, infrastructure. you really want to make sure, okay, are you going to be living in an area? Because there are some expat communities that are kind of remote. Some people like that. And is that going to work for you, living in a remote community? Maybe you have to walk a little bit to get to a bus, or maybe the roads you're going to travel on are dirt or gravel roads.
Yeah, it's more of a no shirts, no shoes required, right?
Yeah.
A little more remote. We don't want shirts and shoes down here.
Yeah, you're not going to the Ritz-Carlton.
That's
so,
right.
But a lot of these countries do have a lot of the modern amenities. They've realized, again, that there's money to be made by attracting expats to their country. So
yeah, I'm going to jump in. My wife and I went to Playa del Carmen, in south of Cancun, down in Mexico.
Yep.
And like literally, right, we were staying in a beautiful hotel. There were shops and restaurants, and we flipped around the corner, and it was a full-on mall, right? Like it had, the Gap and Old Navy. I don't even know what it was. I could be wrong on the stores, but it was like, swinging by Stonecrest at Blakeney or Carolina Place Mall. But I was literally in this little town south of Cancun in Mexico, and it was a full-on 2-story mall with all like the American stores. And I thought, wow, I mean, in some ways it was like, I don't know if I like this. In other ways, it was like, it was comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And I knew that if we needed something, we forgot something, my wife needed to get something, well, we could always go down there because there are plenty of places to find what she was accustomed to. So anyway, I jumped in there. So
no, that's okay.
That's what you're talking about. Like there's a lot of places now that it's everyday places that we're used to seeing.
Well, like I say, as we get older, it's maybe not going to be so easy for some of us to get around. And so you just want to make sure you have those conveniences. But at the same time, I'm thinking that if you're looking at an international destination, you're also looking to get involved in the culture with the people and everything. And so those communities are nearby as well. But again, you just want to think of these things prior to moving and making that big commitment, understanding, their road to getting citizenship or residency, because that can also help you to get even, as a matter of fact, I know some folks that are living in Cuenca, Ecuador, a big expat community. And eventually you can qualify for the residency and apply for their healthcare insurance. And so that's a big factor. So a lot of great things. And again, it really doesn't matter, Chris, whether you're going to go international or stay in the U.S. But the main thing is understanding your budget and then thinking about the lifestyle that you would like to have.
Absolutely. And I'd like to point out, I think one of the more important bullets here is sort of wrap up the international considerations is, if you do end up buying overseas, it's very important that you work with a licensed, experienced realtor and attorney that would help work through the transaction with you, just like you would here in the stateside. But when you're already navigating in a country that you're not accustomed to, their rules and regulations, their contracts, the last thing you need to do is pull up to a sign in front and call and say, I'd like to make an offer on this home, without having the right professionals in place, because the rights and laws and regulations are very different.
No, good point. And I've heard of some stories too, where some folks have gone abroad and bought something, and then later on found out that after someone did some title searching, that they really didn't own the land, and now they were out. And so it is really important to either work with a company such as ourselves. As mentioned before, we have brick and mortar locations throughout the world. I think it's like 60 plus locations throughout the world. The National Association of Realtors that I belong to has also certified international property specialist agents that are living in these various countries and go by the moral and ethics and things that we go through here in the United States over there in their country. And they'll also be working with qualified attorneys, because that's really important, the attorney aspect of it as well. The real estate agent who knows the area, and then also the attorney who does a good title search, does the right paperwork to make sure that once you buy it, it's yours, and now you can start enjoying your life.
Perfect. All right, well, let's sort of slide back to the theme we've got rolling here, the overall theme, and that is, helping you to find that final retirement home. And we've sort of gone through even the search criteria, helping them narrow down how to the area shop, etc. Really, that next step, once whether you're buying stateside or international, really is, let's assume you've shown the homes to them, David, and they've sort of narrowed down. You mentioned to me that really it's all about finding the right home, and that they're really looking for a feeling. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. To me, the one thing that I like doing, Chris, is something that you had talked about earlier. I want to work with people to find the home that's going to be the home that they fall in love with, not just to get them to find a home, close a deal, and move on. That's not the way I like to work. Either it's going to work or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, we move on or whatever the case is.
Pause for a little while, whatever.
Yeah. So I always tell my clients that when we're going out and looking for their primary residence, it's not an investment property where there you're looking at the bottom line. That's different. But when you're looking at your primary residence, I always equate it to if I knew you, for example, and your wife before you got married, and I thought, okay, these two people are going to be, I think it's going to work out well to introduce them to each other because they have a lot of things in common. And then I introduce them to each other, but that chemistry is not there. Well, most likely it's not going to work to the way it is now. Or she just puts up with you.
That's
Chris.
right. Yeah. No, we get good chemistry. My wife's awesome.
But anyways, going back to the subject matter. So what I tell them is I'm going to show you homes that meet your criteria and in the areas that you're interested in. But if we drive up to a community, we drive up to a home, I open up the door and you say, you know what? I know this home is meeting my criteria, but I don't feel it. I don't have that chemistry. Let's go. Then I say, good, let's move on, because there's no sense in pushing you to something that you just don't feel. I know when people are going to find the right home, and by that feeling that you were asking about, people are going to jump up and down. They say, that's it. I don't want to look any further. Let's sign the offer to purchase and submit it to the sellers to see, to move forward. And that's what I look for, is that feeling, them jumping up and down and saying, yes,
we're excited.
This is it.
Awesome. Well, and really sort of the next components of that process and finding that sort of final retirement home aren't a whole lot different than the traditional buying process for that senior. So you're going to make sure that the home value looks like it's supported with sales by doing a market analysis.
Always.
Right? In terms of you would go under contract, you would order a home inspection.
Yes.
To ensure that there are no repairs that need to be addressed.
Correct.
Or major issues, and counsel your client based on the inspection results. If there's a mortgage loan involved, or even maybe not, you might even order an appraisal, right, to determine, is that home worth the $300,000 that they might be paying for it. So on the mortgage side, I'm going to work on securing that mortgage loan for that final retirement home if there is. If they're blessed, then they don't have to have a mortgage, or maybe they do that reverse mortgage. It's a little more cash flow friendly for them. And then at the end of the day, it's just a matter of scheduling with the attorney and really sort of signing and driving on that final home. But I think really the important elements that we discussed were those early steps that we talked about in the process. And that is really knowing your budget as a senior, that and how long that income will be sustained, so that final home is comfortable, because it could be a beautiful home, but if you're living above your means and you don't have the money and cash flow is way too tight, it's not a dream home anymore. It becomes a nightmare home.
Yep.
And I work sometimes with seniors on how to get them out of those pickles, right? Like things have changed financially and now I need to do something different. And that's not fun for them, but it is fun to help them solve that problem. So we're really sort of wrapping up the last minute or two here of Reshair Radio. David, you've been really a real pleasure to connect with and share some of this really, really valuable information. So do you have any sort of parting words of wisdom or anything that you'd like to share as we wrap up for the day?
Well, again, I guess the parting words would be, think again about what your means are, financial means are, and then the next one would be, okay, where do you want to go? Where do you envision yourself? and then take the steps necessary that we went over.
And I call that pick up the smartphone.
Yep.
Right. And dialed.
That's right.
A call because, we put these shows on. Obviously, we like to educate, but we also want to add value to you and family members. We're always looking for referrals on Reshair Radio.
Definitely.
So the number to reach me at is 704-277-4463. Again, that's 704-277-4463. David, real quick, you said you had a little incentive for our listeners today if they mentioned that they heard you on Reshair Radio.
Yes, I do, Chris. I am going to be giving a $100 gift card from Lowe's for
Sweet.
Anybody that calls in. So definitely.
I think I'm going to call it.
Sounds good. I'll get an extra one.
The Lowe's card. But, well, again, David, you've been amazing for today's show. We'd love to have you back again sometime in the future. And thank you for our listeners that have been listening to Reshair Radio. So again, if you need anything, give us a shout, 704-277-4463. And you can always listen to this show in its entirety on reshairradio.com. That's RESHAIR radio.com, reshairradio.com. Thanks again, and hope you all have a great week. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Chris.
Awesome.
You've been listening to Reshair with Chris Reshatar, a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with Movement Mortgage, equal housing lender. Originator license number 117266. Learn more online at themortgagegenius.com.